Hi, my name is Grace, and I'm going to talk about how I got diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. This video is not an educational video. I am graduated in neuroscience, but I do not at this time plan to be sharing studies on this video. But if there's interest, I would love to make another video in the future talking about the neuroscience or the psychology behind dissociative identity disorder, or more about the symptomology. I can't really speak that well. On how it's made. So, pretty much what I wanted to start off to talk about was, in this video, is just how I got diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. I'm not going to be talking about what it is or sharing that information. I'll probably be doing that in a later video. If people are interested in viewing that, I'll leave a comment or like this video and I'll follow up. I'll probably follow up anyways. So I will start off by saying that I'm a little part in my system, so that's why I might seem nervous or a bit wary about being on YouTube. But I kind of wanted to share my story because I wanted to get this out of the way, because my biggest fear with making a video is that if someone will expose me or be weirded out by the fact that I'm often changing and different. And one of the common things is that me and my different parts had different preferences and different styles and even different genders and sexualities and interests, tastes, and pretty much everything. And that caused a lot of conflict in my life, which would lead to people asking me, why are you changing your mind? Are you bipolar? You always change your mind one thing or have another thing, or saying that I'm two-faced without me even realizing it. And I never realized it at first, and I would always be kind of surprised because I think, no, I always like this. I always like, for example, my friend asked me to go hike up a mountain with her, and in my head I was thinking, I would enjoy that at first. But then another part said, no, we don't want to. Then she was acting kind of sad, and it made me feel sad as well. So I switched, and another part came on later that day that told her, oh, I want to go and hike, can we go to the mountain, to try and please her. But then because I had said something else in a different part pretty firmly, no, I don't want to today, I'm so tired, it made it seem, she said, why are you always flip-flopping on what you want? You're always saying one thing and then changing it. That made me feel pretty uncomfortable. Yeah, so I just switched on. My system members don't have names or anything right now, but someday they might. Some of us have created names, but they're kind of internal names. My internal name is Winter, but the other part's internal name is Malcolm. These are just names that are relevant to something about us. And for example, I'm naming it Winter because I was born in a winter snowstorm. I can go more into my story another time in another video if I want to, if we decide. But another part that's coming on. And I want to say this myself, but I'm Malcolm, and pretty much my system doesn't really control when it switches that well, but Winter and I have developed a system where we work together. So when I want to come on, Winter lets me now. It didn't used to be that way, and when Winter comes on, I will let Winter. It didn't used to be that way. With other parts, it's not really that way. They come on whenever they want, and they do and say whatever they want. And sometimes it can be embarrassing and cringy when I look back and I see stuff that other parts have said or done, especially if they're younger than me. Because I'm about 4 years old, and Winter is about 7. And I used to call myself Winter because I was pretending to be Winter. I was pretty much copying Winter's preferences, interests, fashion, hobbies, and everything in order to be more like winter. And the difference between me and winter is that I am transgender. I'm trying to be a boy. Even though I'm little, I'm only 4, I still want to be a boy. But I'm also non-binary, so I'm comfortable with, for example, this, which is what Winter would wear. Winter is non-binary, so Winter would be more comfortable with girl clothing and did this outfit as well as a makeup. And I will pretty much see Winter do a lot of different makeup looks all the time, and most time more extreme, this time more lighthearted, because they were planning on going, or I don't know if she, sometimes I'll call Winter she or he or they don't care. But I want to be called he because the reason I took the name Malcolm, I forgot to say, is that's because it's my name that my parents were going to give me when I was born, and if I hadn't been a girl, then I would be named Malcolm. That's what my parents told me, so I chose this name to tell my system and others that I prefer to be a boy. But it's kind of hard because my system will fight me on that, so I'll go into this in another video maybe, but one of the challenges of having dissociative identity disorder is if your parts have different genders, it's hard to decide which gender to present as when we each have dysphoria, being into different clothing choices. So one of the challenges can be that it's hard to decide on like what types of surgery to get because I don't necessarily know all my parts yet. So I know that I'm non-binary, I'm Winter. I also get dysphoria about having boobs, I guess, having this on my chest, and we would both like to get a top surgery, Malcolm and I, but I don't know what my other parts are. I don't think that they feel that comfortable with that, and they act up when I think about it and talk about it, and I don't really know why yet. So I know that we are making a video, and talking about different parts preferring different things. It can be really hard because I can't really control when my switching is happening, and it kind of gets us annoyed at each other a lot of the time because we always want to be the main focus or the main controller in the body. So that's what I'm on right now, and I'll explain it why I have this battery. This is because I feel like a robot a lot of the time, or a puppet, a marionette puppet that's being turned by strings. And even though I'm able to be in the body, I don't really feel like it's my body, and so I feel like a robot, and I feel disconnected from my feelings a lot of the time. But just to go off, I was going off on a tangent, but just to go back to the main point, the way I got diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder was I've seen this therapist all the time. He's a really good therapist, and he specializes in CPTSD, dissociation, trauma therapy, and dissociative identity disorder. And I didn't actually know that when I found him. One of my friends who was helping me, who was in school to be a psychologist, helped me find the therapist and found it for me. And when I talked to the therapist, I was seeing him for a lot of months before he even told me what was wrong with me. I forget those times because it was in a different part, so I don't remember what we talked about. I know he was doing meditation and stuff for me. And then one time I came on when I was in the therapy, and I actually started, I don't know if it was me or Winter or the two of us, but it was after I got diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which happened when I was in New York City, working in neuroscience, working on Parkinson's disease research. I was really struggling, and I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and all of this happened, and it's a sudden surprise to me. I had no idea. I'm personally a neuroscientist, but sadly I did not have the ability to self-diagnose any of my neurological or mental health stuff, and I actually had no idea until I was told that I had autism or I was autistic. And so that smacked me in the face, took me for a little bit of a loop. I had to tell a few people to explain why I guess I was collapsing at my job at Will Cornell and at New York City, because I was so stressed by the travel and a lot of the stuff that was executive administrative tasks at my job. Even though I was able to memorize the executive tasks that I had to do in the neuroscience part, there was a lot of challenges that came up for me, such as getting to lab, finding stuff. It was just a bunch of challenges that I was facing. I can go into that in another time as well, because I think that might help a lot of people to hear about how I got diagnosed with being autistic. And so it took me a while to actually accept that. I was really upset for a while, and I ended up getting hospitalized in New York City, which was very, very traumatic. But I did make some good friends. I did make some good friends at the hospital, which was very nice. I think I would talk about that some other time, but pretty much after that, I moved back to Washington with my friend, who I had to move out of because he was being abusive, sadly. I don't really blame him for being abusive, but he was being very abusive, so I had to leave. He wasn't able to stop or control himself. Sadly, I had to leave it, but when I was left, I got in a terrible situation leaving New York City. I moved back in with my family in Connecticut and was helping another friend in Boston, but I actually had this old guy who was a sugar daddy that brought me from New York to Boston, drove me with all my stuff in his car, and paid off my old lease when I had to leave because my old roommates kicked me out. There's a big story to go into, and I really want to share this story, but maybe another time when I'm ready. So I'm switching back on because it actually hurts. It actually hurts me to sometimes let that little part speak, because I should do this around people too, but I actually let the little part take control of most of my social interactions. That can be draining because my little parts really take things seriously and try really hard for everything, and they're little, so they're not necessarily as good at stuff as I am. And so if I'm able to switch on, I really want to be able to, and especially when recording a video or anything, because I feel like I have the ability to talk for long periods of time without being tired or burnt out, whereas a little part gets emotional and feels a lot. It feels a lot of anxiety, or he feels a lot of anxiety and stress dealing with it. So long story short, I'll go into, there's a lot to share, but I ended up having to move back to Washington, moved back to the West Coast with my friend, my roommate who I was living with, and the abusive situation didn't really get any better, so it actually kept getting worse. So I still talked to the same therapist. I was in a really bad place, and I told him at some point that I'd been diagnosed as autistic, and he told me, oh, well, I don't really see that being the case. And that's the first person I had heard when I looked up research about people who had tried to come forward about their diagnoses. I'd heard a lot of people saying that their therapist or other people in their lives invalidated it, but it felt like everyone in my real life was just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. And instead of invalidating it, just kind of didn't change anything. They were just expecting me to still act neurotypical or try my best, and just shaming me for the same things that they were shaming me for before, but they weren't surprised about the diagnosis. I think they just found it as another reason to tell themselves, oh yeah, we're so nice that we really care and had the hardship of dealing with someone that's such a difficult person to deal with who's autistic. Yeah, that's sadly how a lot of people think about autism spectrum, so they weren't surprised. But my therapist, who had only seen over Zoom calls and phone calls, and so we were rarely in touch that much, he was surprised at first. He'd never done any research on autism spectrum disorder, so he thought it was something that everyone who has it is like not able to speak or constantly unable to socialize in social situations. He didn't know about masking or anything like that. And he also didn't understand it. So when he said that, I know I had a little part come forward that was on earlier, or maybe two, I don't know really. But they just started going at him like, you're a terrible therapist. I don't think you're a good therapist. And yeah, hold on, let me. I was the one who said that, and I'm Winter, and I basically said, you're not the best therapist, dude. You need to know about this type of stuff because you will have a lot of clients coming in that have this, so you should have done your research. And instead of getting upset, which I expected that he would, he admitted to me that he didn't know anything and he needs to do more research, but he did tell me that he's a specialist in dissociative identity disorder, and he told me that he could tell that I have dissociative identity disorder and that I've switched into a little part. And for me, that was a bit of a shock. He explained to me what that means for me, and I was startled to know about that, and I still haven't accepted it in all my parts to this day. Some accept it, some don't, and most feel a lot of shame about it and try to hide it all the time. Usually we mask our voices to sound more similar, mask our clothing to be cohesive, and mask to try and seem like each other. But that hurts us inside. Like, you can see that I seem really scared and wary because we're all trying to seem similar to each other and changing the ways that we approach life and express ourselves. And see, I can't actually remember something from one to the next if I'm trying to continue on what another one's doing, but we help each other because that would happen because one part gets tired of speaking and then or another one just decides to come on, but switching uncontrollably is a bit weird, but that I guess I always do that, and it usually happens when I think about something personal or another part wants to share something personal. So that's just pretty much the story about the first time that I got diagnosed, and maybe I'll try to film this again to make a better impression and make it more cohesive, or see if I can edit to make it that way, and snip together the storylines. But I mean, I guess it could show you how confusing it is to have dissociative identity disorder and for me to talk to people, because this happens at interviews. This is not something I can control, and this always happens. So this happens at interviews. This happens when I'm making a new friend, when I'm on a date, when I'm in a new relationship. It's draining. It makes it seem like some days I'm making a baby voice and some days I'm making a grown-up voice. That's the thing I'm most aware of. And the thing I most hate is my baby voice. I try to make it lower in order to mask and seem like the bigger parts, but I feel ashamed to be myself, quite frankly. And I think that's because of misogyny, that people think that if my voice is like this, I'm making it, or I'm stupid. People assume that I'm a girl, even though I'm a boy, and I'm just a part in a system with a lot of other parts, and I work together. But sometimes we don't work together, and a lot of times I am the only one here. And I don't know if that's because I pushed them out or they choose to leave. I don't know that much yet, but I'm getting tired, so I'm going to stop in this, but I'll try to film more parts to make this more interesting and make more sense.